Christ in Every Word, a podcast of the Concordia Bible Institute, housed on the beautiful campus of Concordia University, Wisconsin. This is your opportunity to read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest the sacred scriptures with me, Dr. Brian Gurman, Assistant Professor of Theology here at the university, and the Director of the Concordia Bible Institute. Is there anything new under the sun? That's the question you'll find popping up again and again in the Book of Ecclesiastes. We ran into it last time. We'll hit it again this time. Very fascinating question. On the one hand, yeah, of course, new stuff all the time. Got a new school year here at Concordia starting up on Monday. Actually, I already started for the cool School of Pharmacy. It's a different schedule there. But yeah, starting up, got a new pair of pants. Hey, that's new. You know, things are new. But at the same time, discussed last time, we're all under the same cloth of sin, for example. Same brokenness after Eden, same afflictions, same sufferings, same temptations. At the end of the day, is there anything new under the sun? We're going to tackle chapter 2 today. Last time, well, I guess you can figure it out, was chapter 1. Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanities is another key point here. Not only a question about newness, but also this how to translate the hevel, hevelim, breath, air, this sort of, not necessarily vanity, I think I made clear last time, but I lean toward the view of ungraspable or enigmatic, just something, it's a striving after the wind. You can't get your arms around it. You can't contain it. You can't control it. Not necessarily that there's no meaning anywhere, but that you just can't fully grasp it. Those are the words of Ecclesiastes, the book of Kohelet. Sounds an awful lot like Solomon, even though we don't get his name, but Kohelet, we'll refer to the speaker here, the preacher, as Kohelet, and we'll jump in to chapter 2, the text of which reads like this. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this also was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the children of man. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me, and whatever my eyes desired I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after the wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. So I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, as there is more gain in light than in darkness. The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart that this also is vanity. For of the wise as of the fool there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come all will have long been forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. So I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous for me, for all is vanity and a striving after the wind. I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled, and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun. Because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to the one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after the wind. Alrighty, so there you have the text of Ecclesiastes 2. Kind of lengthy, I realize. We're not going to be able to highlight every phrase of every verse, certainly not in a 30-minute podcast. But I will kind of work through some of these major sections and reflect on what we can make of it. I mean, you can kind of tell again that the Solomonic figure is throughout here. You heard this. I mean, we're dealing with somebody with lots of wisdom, lots of wealth. There's the mention of women here in chapter 2. You got all those who were before me in Jerusalem. That phrase, we ran into that already in the first chapter. You get it again here. Clearly, you have this sort of Solomonic figure, and yet his name is never used. You're not going to find Solomon, the name Solomon, in Ecclesiastes, as you will in Proverbs, for example. And that's another thing where I just so fascinated about why we're meant to associate this, I believe, with Solomon, and yet the name isn't there, and I just wonder why that is. I think maybe it's protecting it from being overblown or overdone. Associate this with Solomon, but don't tie it down or pin it down too closely with him so that you miss some of the wider points that's being made. In a sense, this is a very post-exilic thing to do. I mean, that is, if you're of the view that maybe Solomon himself didn't write this book, and I told you last time Luther had a couple different views on this, I don't really see Solomon himself as the author as much as the narrator reporting the words of a Solomonic figure, and that's kind of a loaded view, I realize, and it needs unpacking. But keeping all this straight, I think, is very important to do justice to the kind of literature that we have here. It has its own character, and what does that mean? Well, I mean, in the post-exilic times, there was all kind of this activity of going back to the past and reflecting more in an inspired way about, well, I mean, you can see this even in, so for example, Ben Sira, some of these works. So let's go back and praise the men of the past. So they reflect on the big heroes of the faith, so to speak. You get that a little bit in Hebrews, don't you? Hebrews 11, the Hall of Faith. You mention all these people. But, I mean, you even have it in the Old Testament itself, the canonical books, Chronicles. Well, why do we need Chronicles? I mean, that's a later reflection on the kingdoms, right? The kingdom of the north and the south and the split and all that. We already had kings. Here comes Chronicles. Let's write the thing again. Maybe there's more to say from another perspective, and it'll still be inspired, and it'll still be God's word, and that's what Chronicles does. Why do we need this thing? We already have kings. Well, Chronicles has a voice in the choir too, and so you get the perspective of the kingship from how well they took care of the cult, the liturgy, the worship. How much did they care about church? And what's the relationship between their downfall and neglecting the order of service, that sort of thing. So it has something to say, even though you feel like we've already had this in the Book of Kings. Well, so also Ecclesiastes, I think. What more is there to say? When you go back on, like, for example, 1 Kings 2-8, where Solomon he's wise, he's rich, he has women, and he's thinking through, he's a gatherer, he's got people all around him. The business under heaven, God is in heaven, you are in earth. We're going to see that come up in the book of Ecclesiastes. God is in heaven, you are on earth. Solomon's prayer there in 1 Kings, God is in heaven. Behold, heaven, the highest heavens can't contain you. There's just a lot of First Kings, chapter 2 to 11, the Solomonic portion of Kings going on in Ecclesiastes. But there's even more, and some of that we'll get into here. Yowzer, let's talk about this a little bit. You can see right off the bat, though, that this figure, this Kohelet, I'm going to refer to him as, is working with a very different kind of wisdom. So right off the bat, I'm going to say to my heart, literally, it's like, let me make you experience. Because you're going to hear wisdom going on throughout this. Let me make you experience all these different things, and we'll see what kind of wisdom is there. And Kohelet's going to say, yeah, I'm doing this with wisdom. And yet, right from the start, you see this is the kind of wisdom that's operating here in chapter 2 is a wisdom that stems from the consciousness, from experience. That's the kind of the wisdom that's being formulated here. So, enjoy yourself. But behold, this also was vanity. So he goes after everything. How to cheer my body with wine? Well, I mean, this is, on the one hand, again, you have wine gladdens the heart of men. That's in the Psalms, 104, I think it is, right? At the same time, you have lots of wisdom sayings about the folly, the stupidity of being drunk. So have your wine, but do it in moderation. So is there joy in wine? Well, on the one hand, yeah. You keep it in moderation, it's a good first article gift, as we say. And yet, on the other hand, our weak old Adam wants more and more because it's convinced that there's some sort of enduring pleasure there, or some sort of escape, or some sort of wholeness that it's lacking, or whatever the case is. And so often, as it says in Proverbs 31, I think it is, it'll bite you. The hangover, it's like a serpent, or however it puts it. So there's got to be this middle way, and here I'm drawing on Luther here. As Kohelet tests out all these things, there's got to be, look at, did you notice some of these? Look at what he did. So he goes after wine, so there's drunkenness. And by the way, this is, before we just think that he just let caution rip, and this was just a complete and utter crazy, there's still these phrases throughout all of his experimentation, like drinking wine and building houses and having vineyards and parks and all these things. You get these phrases still guiding me with wisdom. Yes, it's a different kind of wisdom, I would say, but he's still making it clear that this is not just a kind of, this is sophisticated and kind of wide-ranging experiences. This isn't just indulgence in such a reckless kind of way, but it's things that are fully appropriate to his station as king. This is more so about credibility than excessiveness, I think. Now listen to what, did you catch some of this? Versus, this list. So the first third of the chapter is this big list that he tried out. Is there anything good out there? I'm going to try everything. I'm going to try wine. I'm going to try wisdom. I'm going to try women. I'm going to try to plant things and make things and do things. Listen to some of the vocabulary that he uses. Plant. Garden. Fruit trees. All kinds of fruit trees. To irrigate, to sprout, to do and to make. Wisdom. Good, evil. This ringing any bells for you? I mean, all of these, to plant, that's in Genesis 2. Garden, well, of course, garden is all over Genesis 2. Fruit trees, all over Genesis 1 and 2. To irrigate, that word is used in Genesis 2. To sprout, that's Genesis 1. Sprout, the things are sprouting all over the place. To do or to make, that's all over Genesis. God makes, God does. And of course, wisdom, tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Eve sees that it's delight to make. You see what he's trying to do? He's trying to recreate Eden here. He's stepping onto, he's trying to like test drive the throne of God. He's trying to test this is like he tries to be God for a moment and recreate Eden. He's doing the best he can to say, is there anything out there that's not Hevel Hevelim, this sort of breath, ungraspable, enigmatic stuff? And so he gets all this and he says, I had more than anybody else. Again, this Solomonic, he had more wisdom and riches than anything else. Because he asked for wisdom, right? Because you've asked for wisdom and not riches, I'm going to give you wisdom and riches. Then I considered all these things that I've done, And behold, all this was a vanity and a striving after the wind. All of these things, the closest you can get to Eden, and even this, there was no enduring joy here. Again, this yatron, anything left over. You might have a little bit of relaxation in a glass of wine, or getting a job done. But was there anything that was left over? So you cut the grass today, or you cleaned up the yard. Well, some sit back and relax for a while, and others are just, it's on to the next thing. Is there anything in addition to that momentary satisfaction, anything enduring, anything that's lasting? And even this Edenic, paradisical reconstruction on the part of Kohelet just doesn't cut it. That's the first test for our friend Kohelet. We'll talk about what else he does on the other side of our break.
We'll be back in just a moment to the Concordia Bible Institute podcast. In the meantime, I'd like to have you consider this question. What is most important in higher education? How do you prioritize all the knowledge to be gained at an institution of higher learning? Concordia University, Wisconsin, located on the shores of Lake Michigan in Mequon, Wisconsin, just north of Milwaukee, is an institution that is committed to excellence in learning, but at the same time realizes that excellence in itself is insufficient without development in vocation. We believe that God works through our vocations, our callings, in order to serve the needs of those around us. The mission statement of Concordia University puts it this way: Concordia University, Wisconsin is a Lutheran higher education community committed to helping students develop in mind, body, and spirit for service to Christ in the church and the world. You can learn more about the over 70 programs offered at Concordia by visiting the website, www.cuw.edu. And if you're benefiting from our Christ in Every Word podcasts, I encourage you to support this ministry by mentioning it to others and by offering your monetary support. Please consider supporting the Concordia Bible Institute by going to our website, www.concordiabible.org, and clicking on the Contribute page. And now, back to the podcast.
Righty there, folks. We'll continue on with our study of Ecclesiastes. What does it mean to toil? What does it mean to work? Is there anything enduring in what you do? Why do you do what you do? What's the significance of your vocation, for example? What does that mean? Is there anything left over from that? The extent of its satisfaction and meaning is at stake here as we track our friend Kohelet, the preacher, the gatherer. He had riches and wisdom, got everything for himself, made himself a little Garden of Eden, the best anybody could do, and even that didn't satisfy the itch, so to speak. And now we're going to test something else, and that is we're going to test how things look from the perspective of death. Now, when you enter that into the equation, when you start thinking about the death rate as being 100%, how does life look now? How does work look now? How do your struggles look right now from the perspective of the fact that we're going to die? How do your accomplishments look from the perspective of the fact that death awaits us all? The things you're worried about, the things that you're striving after. That's what Kohelet's going to tackle here too as we move forward in chapter 2. He considers wisdom, madness, folly, and we'll start to see him make some concessions. He will start to grant some positive, I guess I could use that word, aspects to these things. I'm looking, you heard it earlier, verse 13. There is more gain in wisdom than in folly. So you can't make sense of things, but every once in a while, Kohelet's going to throw a proverb at you to say, yeah, I do understand traditional wisdom. I'm a believer. I understand these things. And yet this is sort of the figure, it feels like kind of a wiser, kind of a chastened, Solomonic figure, so to speak, looking back on all that he had and saying, well, even the wise and the fool, though, even though there's more gain in wisdom than in folly, even the wise person, again, we're from the perspective of death, the wise person and the fool alike are going to die. So the wise person is not walking in darkness. Oh, again, the darkness and the light. There's more gain in light than in darkness. Genesis, light, darkness. Sometimes I wonder how much Genesis kind of hangs over this whole thing. Well, anyway, the wise person and the fool alike are going to die. So I hated life, which is kind of a fascinating yikes. I mean, again, the very reflection on death, what that does to one's outlook on life. And again, huge in Genesis, right? The early child, in the day that you eat of it, you shall die. Okay, well, they ate of it, and did they die? They're still alive, but yet now we speak in terms of the fall, and so there's a brokenness, thorns and thistles, and pain and childbearing and toil. So that's the other thing, too. Toil is everywhere. And Kohelet is thinking this through. And so you're going to start to hate life from that perspective, from just thinking, well, the wise and the fool, they're both going to die. So even if there's something to be said for wisdom, which he, in a sense, grants, and he's going to grant some other things, too, as we move along. Kohelet's more concerned about the tension between these two things. There's something to be said for wisdom, yes, Book of Proverbs, and yet at the same time, they're going to die too, just like the fool does, and all your stuff's going to the next guy, and he could squander it and plunder and all of this. The beauty of the book is how to walk through those tensions. I'm very fond of Luther's reading on this, by the way, because he sees the book, by and large, as a book about contentment, God's gift of contentment, how to be content in God's word and God's work for us. Because even as soon as you get pleasure, Luther says, you're going to find bitterness in some way, shape, or form. Win a bunch of money? A millionaire, how many millionaires go broke, because they can't, the managing it itself drives them nuts and they can't do it and they're broke and now they're in poverty because they won so much money, or their friends, their relationships are busted up, families are busted up, money tears things up. Hey, what a pleasurable thing to get this gift, and then comes the bitterness, in so many different aspects of life, that's just the case. What a wonderful gift. Now, where is the thing I'm worried about it being stolen? What a remarkable treasure. Now, I hope nobody's, or is it getting beat up? Or, I got to keep my eye on it. It occupies us in a way that, all this stuff. And so Luther is all about traveling the middle way. Insofar as we travel the middle road between the kind of despair and pride, I guess you could say, insofar as we do that, we are wise and we are living with God's gift of contentment. So anyway, that's what's at stake here with Kohelet. And he's testing both those boundaries to put forward a kind of, how do you walk that middle road? On the one hand is I got everything. On the other hand is this, I hated life. Now, on that note, it's not as if he suddenly just flies off the deep end. He doesn't promote suicide or anything like that. But it's the sense of saying, look, I've got the best of the best, and no matter what, even with that and the toil and all these things that I've done, those things ultimately, anything under the sun, ultimately will not do for you what you need it to do for you. Our souls will still be restless until they finally find their rest in thee. Borrow from Augustine there. And so he hated this stuff. He's been there and he's tested it, and there's nothing more to conclude other than that I hated life. I hated all my toil, which I told under the sun, seeing that at the end of the day, I don't see any endurance, anything left over here. Anybody could easily come along and completely destroy anything that I was able to do. See, that's the other thing, too, is that you reflect back on the First Kings connection, too. What happened there? You had the unified kingship, and then what his son gets at Rehoboam, Jeroboam, the kingdom splits, all these nasty kings. What was built up there, a beautiful temple and all these wonderful things, will eventually just crumble. So you got this you have that, I think, reverberating in the background as well. This also is vanity and a great evil. At the end of the day, even the best of the best doesn't endure. We're going to need something else. And so here, as I look at the time here, and I want to make sure we get to this kind of the punchline that he has for his whole book, not only this chapter, but for his whole book. After he kind of comes to this conclusion that all days are full of sorrow, work is a vexation. Remember that. I'm going to draw back on that. Even in the night, his heart does not rest. This is a vanity, okay? Here's what happens. In verse 24, we have the first of several carpe diem passages. They're so called. I don't really like that, by the way. I'll tell you why in a second. But we have this first kind of acknowledgement from Kohelet about what then should we do? You're not going to, I mean, he's not such a pessimist that he's going to say, well, just cast everything into the oblivion and that's the end of the matter. This is a very kind of, I like the word sophisticated test that he's going under here. And his conclusion is quite profound, I think, in some ways. I want to chew on this with you. And that is this: there is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also, I saw, is from the hand of God. Wow. So that's his conclusion, and that's fascinating for a number of reasons. First of all, he was just eating and drinking and doing plenty of toil. And he said, this is all nonsense, or hevel. I can't grasp what's in this. Second of all, he doesn't say that we should run away from toil. There is toil. It's not that, well, the blessed life or the good life, or there's nothing better than we should just try to run away from toil and work and our vocation and things like that. But eat and drink and find enjoyment in it. Again, toil. This is Genesis stuff. There's a whole lot of eating and drinking going on in Genesis. There's a whole lot of toil there. Yes, after the fall, the toil will be with sweat on the brow. You'll get your bread and that sort of thing. But again, bread, eating. The first sin was one of eating. It involved food. Don't eat. Did God say about eating this one or eating that one? And they ate from the tree, and now their sin is about toil. And the curses are the ground because it'll bring forth bread, the stuff you eat. It'll involve, these are all food everywhere. Eating, drinking, and find enjoy. These are fundamental to humanity. There's something about eating and drinking and working that is, quite frankly, non-negotiable for what it means to be human. Of course, eating and drinking, we need these things to survive, and that in and of itself is kind of profound. Every time you eat, you're implying that you're dependent upon whatever is giving you the food. That kind of puts you in your place to say, I need this. Even if I skip lunch, I'm going nuts here. Can't think right. One little meal, that's it. We can't even, a couple meals, one day without food, we're going nuts. We can't, that sort of thing. We're entirely dependent creatures on eating and drinking. I go a few minutes without water, I'm going nuts. But of course, eating and drinking are expressions of the kind of peace that God intended for his humanity from the beginning. And so also working. I probably harped on this last time, and I'm probably going to do it again after this, but I'll do it again here. And that is working as central for what it means to be human. Why is that? Well, God creates Garden of Eden. He throws Adam in there, and he says, go work it. Well, there's no thorns, no thistles. There's nothing that... I'm pretty sure the job's done already before it started. No, work it, because in that you reflect the very image into which you've been made. If God is one who works for his creation, he creates humanity in his image, so also there's something deeply foundational, fundamental about humanity that needs to work. Why is it that the vacations can be too long and drive us nuts? Well, maybe a few reasons, but what is it that makes us, I'm so bored, I just wish I had something to do. It's in the DNA. We're meant to serve others because we've been made in the image of him who serves us first. Eat, drink, and find enjoyment. So find some sort of enjoyment in it. And why? It's from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? That's even in the stuff that brings sweat from the brow. The toil out there that you do, even the mundane, the calendar looks like the same today as it has been the last 800 days. There's nothing new under the sun. If I can draw on Kohelet here. The calendars, the mundane, the stuff I'm doing, same old at work. You always hear that same old. And yet at the same time, insofar as this work is from God, which of course it is because he places us into our vocations to serve him and serve others, insofar as that's from him, there is enjoyment in the fact that there is meaning there, even though we don't recognize it all the time or ever. But we know that this toil, this eating and drinking, certainly from God. We can't make food out of who causes the seed to grow and that sort of thing. We can water, but ultimately who gives the growth, as Paul would put it. And how also this toil that comes our way, whatever it is, ultimately has meaning precisely because it comes from God. In fact, there's something so... we're going to get into this in chapter 3 when we talk about time. Kohelet's going to have lots to say about work in relation to time. It's just a fascinating thing that he goes through all this work and toil and says there's nothing in it anywhere. It's all vanity. And then he says the best thing you could do is toil. In a sense, there's nothing better. I saw one person put it this way: work perfects pleasure, as in there's nothing more pleasurable than work. Now, wait a minute. I hate my job, you might be thinking. And yet, at the same time, insofar as that work is fundamental to who you are as a human being made in God's image, the archetypical worker for us first, there's nothing more pleasurable than serving others. This is the kind of thing, and I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but when we get into the time, there's a time for this and a time for that, time to love, time to hate. Time in relationship to that can even be kind of, so far as we can tell, suspended when working at it is kind of tapping into that deeper satisfaction. And have you ever had those days? Well, time flew by today. I lost track of time. It's these moments. You get that in other areas of life too. Oh, you go on a first date and you're love struck or whatever. Time flies. You lost track of time. Where did the time go? You're so preoccupied that you're almost kind of, I don't know how to put this in the best way, but you're kind of like, time is temporarily suspended, sort of, or the sense of fulfillment that you are getting is actually so strong that it obscures your notion of time. Now, why is it that work is able to do that? Well, to draw on our friend Kohelet here, it's because that's precisely from the hand of God. There's a profound sense of joy and satisfaction in that, because in our toil, our Lord is serving others through us. And that is a profound kind of wisdom as well. That's wisdom, that's joy, that's knowledge. That's much more than just looking around with our senses or the conscious, early bird gets the worm sort of standard observation kind of wisdom. That's wisdom from above. So I definitely don't see these. We're going to get a couple of these, by the way. I should mention that. This eat, drink, and find enjoyment in toil. We're going to get this throughout the book. I'm seeing we're running out of time here. We're going to tackle these kind of gradually as we move along. But I definitely do not see this as kind of like a carpe diem. See people call these things carpe diem passages. Seize the day, just let it flip and let loose. This is I find it to be a quite profound reflection on the nature of vocation and what it means to be human in light of Genesis, in light of Solomon and what happened there, and the heights of his wisdom and fame and riches and all of that, and how that played out, what it means to be alive. Life and death, these sorts of things. These are very serious, profound, sophisticated questions that are being pursued here. And it's precisely this eat, drink, and find enjoyment in toil that serves as a kind of, it's like a thesis statement that Kohelet gives us for how to walk through that tension, how to navigate the pride and despair things. Insofar, if you're human, you know that sense of pride and despair, and this is the way, the middle way, to draw on Luther's language, how to work through that. All the while remembering, and I'll close with this, that just as God himself stepped into a broken Garden of Eden back in the book of Genesis, so also he stepped into a broken world in the person of Christ in order to eat, drink with sinners and take up the joy that was set before him in enduring the work and shame of the cross. Lots more to say about Ecclesiastes as we continue to push forward. Fascinating book, very profound in many ways, I think. Stick with me. We'll tie together some loose themes or key words and phrases as they continue to pop up the book. Thanks for tuning in. Please consider mentioning this podcast to your family and friends so that they too can learn more about God's Word with us. The mission of the Concordia Bible Institute is to provide Christ-centered Bible instruction from distinguished experts who teach Christ in every word of the Old and New Testaments to strengthen faith and spread belief in the one true God. Again, if you benefit from this podcast series, I encourage you to consider supporting the Bible Institute by going to our website, www.concordiabible.org, and clicking on our Contribute page. Until next time, I'm Dr. Brian Gurman, wishing you God's blessings in Christ Jesus our Lord.